Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I have a topic I want to dive into all around fat loss. If you're stuck, why low calories aren't inherently bad, what can happen when you get stuck here, and what to do about it there. So before I go into that, right now my performance recomp method, which is my one-on-one online program, is open for enrollment right now. So make sure you go and check that out. The link to it is in the show notes if you want to find out more, but I'll give you more information here at the end of this episode if you are interested. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. So what I want to go over first is, okay, if we're trying to get leaner and it's not happening, these are typically the top three reasons why somebody is not losing weight. And this really, I've put this down to working with hundreds of clients, what ends up being a thing based on, again, working with clients, but then also just what I hear from people. And it's not just about willpower, and it's not just about macros or cutting your calories more, right? If you're stuck, it usually comes down to one or more of these things. So I'm going to put these in three different buckets here. So again, first I'm going to go over the three reasons, and then I'm going to hit on why trying to cling to your lowest weight and continuing to just try and push weight down isn't the answer. Some things you can run to, especially as we get 30 plus. And then I do want to touch on how just because you are low calorie doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. And then we'll talk about phasing nutrition and when to move outside fat loss and what that may look like and the benefits of doing that and how you can go about that and some things you can focus on without gaining a bunch of body fats there. All right. So first we're going to start with the three. So first, physically, right? What this means is your body isn't in a good spot to get as lean as you want. And it's just not in a good spot to lose body fat at the moment. A lot of times people just think, oh, hey, I want to lose body fat. So therefore, because I want to lose it, I should be able to do that. That's not necessarily always the case, right? There's a few things here physically that could put you in a position where you're not in a great spot to lose body fat. One, you've been dieting for too long. You've been just trying to continue to push down, or you've lost 10, 20% of your body weight and you keep trying to push it down. You could be somewhat adapted. Your metabolism it could be adapted. And again, you're just the space now where like you need to take a break from fat loss dieting, right? If you keep trying to push it down from a physical standpoint, you're not going to feel great. And it's just going to be really hard to continue to go down. And so it's like, you're just really trying to push uphill. There's just a lot of friction in that process. But from a physical standpoint, maybe you've maxed out the fat loss that you can have with your current fat loss methods, right? Maybe you have suboptimal fat loss methods. Maybe you could work on certain things in terms of the rate of loss. You could work on incorporating some refeed days, some higher calorie days, maybe a diet break built in there. Maybe you need to improve your diet quality, your macro composition, whatever it is. Our fat loss methods are suboptimal and we can work on that. So again, this is something that's going to get somebody to not continue to see results. Maybe your stress is super high. Maybe you're just going through a super high stress time. And because of that, your body's just not in a good state to want to drop body fat right now. Again, it would be the same thing. The analogy of it feels like you're going uphill there. And or maybe just sleep is awful. Maybe these things go hand in hand there. So again, the stress is high from a stressful period of time in your life. Maybe there's a lot of stress on your body and you need to work on those things. Maybe your training and recovery aren't in line. Maybe you're trying to just really push training. You're trying to train a ton. Maybe you have a performance goal. Maybe you're trying to train for a marathon at the same time. And because of that, now you're training super high. Your recovery is not aligned. And this is going to be something that's going to stall fat loss. So we need to make sure that is in check. Circadian misalignment. Maybe we are not getting sunlight. Maybe you are someone who works overnight and same thing there, your body's going to just not be in a great spot to lose body fat. That doesn't mean we can't ever lose body fat, but we have to be a bit more strategic with it. We can't just push things down. But circadian misalignment is maybe you don't ever get outside and get any sunlight. Maybe you have a lot of light exposure at night and that's impacting your sleep. And then that impacts how you feel the next day there. Or maybe you just have poor cardiovascular fitness. Maybe that is something that you need to work on and dial in and get improved is working on your cardiovascular fitness. And it typically isn't necessarily just one of these. It's probably a combination. Like people are going to have multiple combinations of these. So really what we need to do here is we need to put our body in the right position, in the right state to lose fat, and we can't just force it. So from a physical standpoint, any of these could be off, and that's the reason why you're potentially stuck. We'll talk about some solutions in terms of what do we actually do if that's the case. Mentally, so first we have physically, right? There's physical reasons why. Now we have mental reasons why. You're not willing to make the necessary trade-offs to continue to get leaner. A lot of times when we first get started, it's like what you have to do to lose, say, your first 10 pounds is a lot different than what you have to do to continue to push it further down. And so one thing here is you say you want to get leaner, but you're not ready to dial things in. So it's like, hey, I want to get leaner. I want to be at a certain position, but I also don't want to make those sacrifices. I don't want to go to bed earlier. I want to stay up and play video games with my friends. I want to have alcohol 5 nights a week. It's okay, mentally, yeah, you want to get there, but you're not actually making the sacrifices and want to make the sacrifices that you need to actually get leaner. So there's a mismatch here. Something always gets in the way. So whether that be, hey, work's super stressful, or oh, I just forget to meal prep, or I'm super busy, or my significant other has food in the house and then I am always snacking, or I always eat their food, or I always eat my kids' foods. Like, just something always gets in the way. There's always something. I've seen this multiple times with clients. Again, just even in other aspects of coaching too. It's like just there's always something. It just doesn't matter. Every week there's just something new there. And so again, it's more so a mental thing than anything. It's a mental that we need to work through here. And it could come back to, hey, you're just not ready to dial things in. You can't tolerate any amount of hunger. So it's every time you get somewhat hungry, you're like, oh crap, I have to eat something. In the fat loss process, there's going to have to be some hunger. We're going to have to get uncomfortable with that. And we're going to have to sit through some of that. And if you're always just eating when you're hungry, you're going to struggle to lose fat. Every time an event comes up, you're no longer in fat loss mode. So it's, oh, and this kind of comes back to something always gets in the way. It's, oh, it was a busy weekend. It was Labor Day weekend. It was a holiday weekend. This person got married. We had this event. We had friends over. There's just always, there's events. When these events come up, you end up not wanting to be in fat loss mode. And again, that comes back to, you say you want to get leaner, but you're not ready to dial things in. So same thing here. You're not willing to make changes, sacrifices. Let's take an event, a social event, and you're like, I don't want to give that up. I don't feel like I need to do that. Or every time you go out to eat, you feel like you have to have something super tasty. And if you're not willing to make those changes and sacrifices that you need to, you're going to struggle. Or you give up or spiral after one poor day meal. So again, mental can be like you have a bad meal, or maybe a meal that's off plan, or whatever it may be, and then that spirals you out of control. Or one thing goes wrong and now you're completely off plan every single time. These are going to be things from a mental standpoint that are going to hold you back. You're going to have trouble getting to that next level of leanness. That doesn't make you weak. It just means now might not be the right time for restriction. We may need to change how we go about this for a period of time, especially if you continue to try and do this over and over again, and these same not excuses, but same things keep popping up. And again, we'll talk about what exactly we could do there. Third thing is going to be skills. So you don't have the habits or tools yet to get as lean as you want. So maybe your first 10 pounds you're able to get, but now you just continue to have the sticking point. Maybe skills could be you're just guessing on portions. You don't realize how many calories are in certain foods. That's a big one. People track things and they just don't realize that how many calories are in certain foods. So they don't feel like they're necessarily eating a lot of food, or they feel like they're restricting, or they're not eating this food and they feel like they should be in a deficit and be losing body fat, but they don't realize how many calories are in certain foods. Don't understand or know how to manage hunger. So how do we manage that? How do we eat in a way that we can manage that? How do we get over being hungry, and how can we work through that? You don't know how your body should feel in a deficit. Maybe you feel like in the past you've always done something super restrictive, so you feel like you should just be super depleted and feel terrible in the process, and that will work for some period of time, but eventually it's going to get to the point to where you're going to struggle and continue to get past that next level of leanness. So it's this little bit of, yes, there needs to be some hunger, but we also need to manage it. And so there is a certain feeling that I think you should go after. And if you do that multiple times and you push through that, you start to understand what that kind of feeling is. You don't recognize how your body responds to fat loss or calorie restriction. You don't understand that, hey, certain foods may be a lot more tasty when you are in a deficit and you start eating certain foods. You don't realize how easy it is for you to overconsume those foods, or how you naturally want to overconsume that food, or how you crave certain foods. You don't understand how it could impact. I guess what I'm getting at here is like people will go 3 or 4 days of restricting a ton, and then they get super hungry, and then they overconsume food. So you're not really recognizing how your body responds to fat loss. And everyone's going to be a little bit different. Some people can get away with 2 or 3 days of really low calories and they're fine. Some people have that and they overconsume calories and then they're not in a deficit. You're inconsistent with meals or weekend structure. So maybe each day it's one day you have one meal, then you have four, then you have two. You're just all over the place. And then maybe on the weekends your structure just completely goes away. And then now it's the same thing. 5 days a week you're crushing it. And then the 2 days over the weekend, 2.5 days over the weekend, you're totally off plan and you just can't get past that next kind of level. Another skill aspect would be maybe it's your tracking. Maybe you track as you go, or you track at the end of the day. So maybe you track at the end of the day and then you forget half the stuff you ate throughout the day. And so I'm tracking 1,200 calories, but really you're eating 2,000 calories a day. And now you're closer to maintenance. And just your tracking and logging skills in general need improvement, which tracking and logging is a skill and we get better at it over time with deliberate practice. But if you aren't, but again, that can be something that holds you back because our tracking skills are not great. Same thing, one of those things that I just mentioned was tracking as you go or at the end of the day, or maybe you have no idea what a portion size is and you put in what seems way too good to be true, where it's you put in 100 calories, but really it's 550 calories there. So in this situation, you're doing the things, but you're still stuck. The good news is these are trainable and they matter more than motivation. I think the mental piece is super important when it comes to fat loss and is often overlooked. So those are going to be the three main reasons why someone isn't dropping weight. We can really pinpoint it to three things: physical, mental, or skill based there. Now, what happens when you just continue to push through? You just keep trying to push through, keep trying to lose more weight, and or you're just worried about when you do that because you're scared to see your weight come up at all, and so you just end up trying to keep the lowest scale weight possible all the time, even if it goes up 1 pound, and or you just keep trying to push through. Yeah, I'm just going to keep losing more and more weight. You don't really have a goal. It's just I just want to keep losing weight. Every time you talk to someone, oh, yep, I'm losing weight. Cool. Where are you at? I just want to keep losing more weight, and they don't really ever have a they just don't want to see their skill weight go up at all. They just want to keep seeing it go down. So I think in this situation, when this happens, especially when we're 30 plus, what happens when we're scared to increase our calories at all, and or we're just trying to cling to our lowest scale weight and keep seeing it go down. And this might feel like you're doing everything right on paper, but under the hood, there's a lot of things that could be going on. One, we could have micronutrient deficiencies. So when we have micronutrient deficiencies, especially when we're 30 plus, energy is going to take a dip. And then on top of it, when we already have high stress from like work and family stress, you're going to feel like crap. And this is just going to start to trickle down from how your body essentially runs. Things are going to start to get dysregulated. Like hormones could be impacted by this. Things like thyroid, immune system, all these things can be impacted by micronutrient deficiencies. And so what can end up happening here is this can lead to other issues long term. This is where, again, you'll see people have thyroid issues long term. You'll see people have hormonal dysregulation, they'll have gut issues, and this leads to things like autoimmunity. So this trickle down effect here of maybe you're under recovered. These people tend to get sick more often. So this is what's going to end up happening. Bone health is going to be impacted as well too. This is also going to lead to poor training, which means you're going to have less muscle growth plus worse cardiovascular fitness equals slower recovery, no training adaptations, and everything feels tougher, and it's harder to maintain a lean look as you age. So we're not really able to push our training in a way that we're going to see any sort of adaptation. So from a body comp standpoint, we don't ever improve. We don't ever add lean body mass. And that, again, is going to be problematic down the line if we don't have as much lean body mass. If we lose lean body mass and or we're not continuing to build more. Now, you don't necessarily need to just continue to build lean body mass and have massive amounts of muscle, but we want to have a good base. And I just see a lot of times people put themselves in a position to have way less than they should because of the way that they go weight loss and body composition. This is going to lead to a lower metabolic rate and thyroid function. So I already hit on thyroid function, and these kind of go hand in hand. With thyroid, you are going to have a lower metabolic rate if your thyroid's low. So this comes back to the micronutrient thing where down the line, this can start to impact you. Plus, when we're consuming less calories, there will be a little bit of an adaptation to that. And so your metabolic rate is going to be slightly impacted if you're always trying to maintain your lowest scale weight and continue to push it down, which means you have less flexibility with your caloric intake. So easier fat regain. You're just going to have lower energy because you're not fueling your body with everything that it needs. And it's having to adapt some of its energy where it's consuming energy, where it's utilizing energy. And so this is going to also lead to a tougher time changing your body as you age. So easier fat regain, lower energy, and a tougher time changing your body as you age. Next, we have, as I said, hormonal issues. Recovery and libido already trend down with age, and staying too lean/chronic undereating can make this work. So for not getting the micronutrients in that we need, this can have a downstream impact on our hormones. We also know that if we're not eating enough, this can impact your things like testosterone, the balance of estrogen and progesterone. And if we're not just constantly under fueling, this is going to impact recovery. And obviously testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all that has impact on your libido as well too. And menstrual cycle. So that would be another thing that I would potentially be looking at as well too. If I'm for my women that listen is menstrual cycle. This is going to lead to some menstrual cycle dysregulation as well too. Next, immune system. You can't afford to be sick all the time when life is this busy. So you're going to see a decrease in your immune system potentially, which means you're also not going to train as well. You're not going to be motivated to train, and you're going to miss out on work and other things there. You're going to have lower willpower and motivation. Chronic underfueling means more decision fatigue plus higher hunger cravings, making it easier to say screw it and harder to stay consistent. So you'll probably see this where you just are on or off again, or you're going to feel like you have really low motivation. Altered gut health, so bloating, poor digestion, and shifts in mood, motivation that make your body less responsive to change, and everything feels harder than it should. Now we're running into this issue where we could potentially run into some gut health issues as well, which can impact your nutrient absorption. Now we're going to be low on micronutrients potentially, as we talked about. You're also going to have constant food focus, meaning more anxiety, less freedom in life. And this isn't like a for sure thing that's always going to happen, but this is typical with this kind of, hey, I got to keep losing weight, keep my weight down, which is all just going to lead to stalled progress. You're doing more and getting less. So most clients are surprised how much better they feel and how much easier progress becomes once they stop white knuckling their leanest look and just trying to have their lowest weight year round. But one thing that I didn't mention, I briefly touched on it, was bone health. That's going to be another thing that's impacted. So for women over 40, this is where you can start to, and we want to think about this in our 30s as well, too. I think if you're in your 30s and this is already happening, this is probably going to lead to some potential issues down the line. But this is extremely problematic for someone who's 40 plus and for women in particular. But this is also generalizable across the board with men and women there. Now, what I do want to hit on real quick before I talk about, okay, so what do we actually do with this? Like what's the practical application here? How do we work around this? I also want to say that just because you're low calorie, it's not inherently bad. It's not that if you just eat 1,300 calories, you're automatically going to see your hormones wrecked, your adrenals wrecked, and that's why you're not losing weight is because you're eating too low calories. That's not necessarily the case. It is context dependent. So yes, this amount of calories can become problematic for some people, right? But saying 1,300 calories always wrecks your hormones or adrenals isn't the whole story, and it may be why you aren't seeing the results you want. So we do need to figure that out. Let's go over three things here. So one, for some people, this intake might be necessary to lose body fat. This doesn't mean you have to go that low, but depending on your size, body comp, and goals, you might need to temporarily dip into a low calorie amount for you, whatever it's. If that low calorie amount's 1,800 for a large male, whether that's 1,200 for a female, right? It doesn't depend. It's just the amount of calories you need to eat to drop weight. You may need to drop lower than what you think, and it may be low. And so you ultimately have the choice to do that or not. But there's this message out there that you can lose body fat on super high calories if you just eat up. And so this leads to unrealistic expectations for many. You still need to create a calorie deficit to lose body fat. And unfortunately, for many people, this is going to be on the lower side of calories and probably lower than they think. However, we may be able to bump this up slightly by improving habits and skills and doing what I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But the big takeaway is, like, for some people, you have to go super low calorie to drop body fat. And again, that's based on body size. Typically, you'll see women who are sub 130 pounds have to go fairly low with their calories or lower than they want there. But again, there are some things that we can do to potentially offset that in a fat loss phase, but we just have to understand that you might have to go that low. Number two, saying X amount of calories always wrecks hormones or adrenal function is an overgeneralization. It can contribute to issues, right? Those particular issues in terms of hormones and adrenal function, but it's going to depend on the duration of time spent there, your current body fat levels, your training output, your genetics. Some people are more sensitive to energy deficits, and lifestyle, stress, and recovery. So energy needs are going to vary from person to person. So if you're spending 6 weeks here, not a big deal. Now, if you're starting to spend 6 months or longer there, this is going to start to add up. Your current body fat levels, if you're at lower body fat percentage, you have a little less wiggle room here. You're probably not going to be able to spend as long. Whereas you take someone who is fairly high body fat, they can probably extend that time out and they have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of how low they can go with their calories. Your training output, and movement, if you're training a ton, you might need to watch how low your calories get there, because the more you train, the more you move, a lot of times your calories are going to have to match that. Genetics. Some people just are more sensitive to large deficits or really low calories, or again, large deficits. I think the size of the deficit is key, though. That's one thing that I didn't put in here is the size of the deficit. 1,300 calories for some people is a small deficit. And so they're not going to have as many issues as somebody who 1,300 calories is a large deficit. So I think that is impactful. But then also, like I said, genetics is going to be key. And then lifestyle, stress, and recovery. So obviously someone who has higher stress levels and high stress on the body, this may be more impactful for them. I guess the other thing too that I didn't mention is diet quality. That's going to be huge. We go back to the micronutrient talk. If you're getting a high quality diet in, I think you can get away with this. And then number three, people underreport calories all the time, which is why I never look at just a number. I also look at results and biofeedback. How's your energy? What's your training performance? How's your menstrual cycle? What's sleep look like? Are you actually seeing progress? Because people will often report 1,300 calories, but they're really eating 1,800 plus calories, for example. And again, this can happen on purpose or on accident. As I just talked about earlier, skill is a huge thing here. Tracking is a skill, and even those who are skilled accidentally underreport. So to top all this off, people are not good at tracking calories, especially the lower they get. I feel like it's just easier to omit calories on purpose and on accident and to just underreport how much you're eating. Because I've gone over client case studies with clients before, or clients and other coaches, and it's, oh, isn't that too low calories for them? It's, how do you know that? Like, how do you know that's too low? I think there's just this message put out there that low calories are all just automatically bad. And there's a lot of context that goes into it. And I think this is where you need to pair your biofeedback with this to see if it is too low or not. Now, if somebody's eating 1,300 calories and their energy is terrible, their training performance sucks, their menstrual cycle is completely off, sleep's impacted, they're constantly thinking about food, they're not seeing results, then yeah, that probably is too low calories for them. And we need to adjust what's going on. So let's talk about when 1,300 calories, or again, just low calories in general. And I say in quotations because low calorie is all relative to the person. It's when somebody eats this way for months on end, then that's where they run into issues, loses their cycle or sees big biofeedback drops, combines it with high training output, especially with no clear training goal, i.e. someone just burning calories. That's the other big thing. If you're just eating low calorie and then you're also just burning, like you're just training to burn as many calories as possible. Maybe this is also problematic if you never incorporate maintenance calorie days or weeks. You never do a building phase ever, right? You never increase your calories to maintenance or a small surplus. You don't resistance train or eat enough protein, and you lack micros in your diet. You also have poor sleep, high stress, or no recovery support. And this calorie amount is well below their true energy needs. Then yes, problems with low calories can start stacking up fast. So the takeaway with this part of this episode is low calories can be part of the process, and they sometimes need to be depending on your goals. But the key is intention and strategy. Avoiding low calories out of fear might be the reason you're stuck and not losing fat even when you're trying everything. So far, we've taken two approaches here. We've taken, here's why people tend to not lose body fat. And we broke it down to three things: mental, physical, skill. Second part of the podcast was around what's the problem of trying to continue to push through when maybe that's not happening and when you do this for long periods of time. And then three, it was, hey, actually, low calories aren't necessarily always bad and we don't always have to completely avoid them. So now I just want to wrap this up by talking about, okay, what do we actually do here with all this? And what's the solution a lot of times? The solution a lot of times is going to be getting to maintenance calories at a period of time, or a small surplus depending on where you're at, or at least taking a period of time. And it doesn't have to be a full on, hey, I need to spend 12 months trying to push my body weight up and gain a bunch of weight. It can be, hey, I'm going to take 1 month of eating at maintenance calories, especially if you're falling into that bucket of everything that I talked about initially. So we need to go to maintenance calories or a small surplus for a period of time and work on improving habits, performance, and optimizing metabolism. So this may look like you're going to do, instead of just keep trying to always eat less and less, it's in our 30s plus, it's not about staying at your leanest or lowest scale weight. It's about using strategic phases. Okay. So also including fat loss phases. So you can look great, feel strong, and actually change your body. So for example, this could look like spending 3 months in a deficit, then the other 9 months you're feeling for performance, muscle growth, and building habits. That exact time frame is really dependent on the person. It could be the first couple of years that they are far away from their ideal body composition. For them, maybe it's 6 months out of the year or 9 months out of the year, we're pushing more of a deficit than 3 months we're out of it. Or maybe you're someone who has a really small deficit, you have high body fat levels. Maybe the first year in that 12 months, you are in a deficit the entire time, but we have to track biofeedback and make sure you're in a good spot. Or maybe you are throwing in some 3-week diet breaks or 2-week diet breaks, and that's going to prolong that process. But in turn, your biofeedback's going to be much in a good spot. So you're going to be able to prolong that process. But I think the key being, we can't just always keep trying to lose weight and keep trying to trend things down. We have to take this period of time to spend months in a deficit. And then from there, we also need to make sure we fuel at periods of time. And this is exactly what I do in the performance recon method, right? Where there's no random macros, there's no just grind harder and hope the scale drops approach. We need to assess the entire system: training, nutrition, lifestyle, biofeedback, and guide you toward what you need right now to build a body that looks, feels, and performs better. Because you're not broken, but something in your system likely needs work. And the answer isn't to just push through and push harder and keep trying to lose more weight. It's to zoom out, find the missing link, and fix it with a smarter plan. So in the performance recon method, we're also looking at your current body composition. Where's that at? Your recent dieting history, because that's going to impact the decision or which route we go. What are your goals? If you're someone who doesn't necessarily want to have the most muscle possible, do we have to put you in a calorie surplus? Probably not. But again, it depends on the person and it depends on these things. Where's your biofeedback? We have to look at that. And then your unique physiology, like how does your body specifically respond to things and what do you specifically need there? Now, again, a takeaway here with this is there's never a bad time to shift into a building recomp phase. And this can be done at maintenance calories where the focus is on performance, habits, muscle growth, and metabolic health. So making sure that when I say metabolic health, it's making sure that we're fueling our body and we're not chronically underfueling it all the time there. But again, just there's never a bad time to shift to this and focus on our inputs because it's really going to help set you up later on. And you can also build habits, right? So if there's a mental block and or a skill block or even a physical block, going to maintenance calories and working on weight training, dialing in the lifestyle habits, dialing in your biofeedback and getting better diet quality, like that's never going to be a bad thing. If anything, it's going to help set you up for better fat loss and body comp change in the future there. And so that's usually the missing link for people. It's just this, hey, you want to get leaner. Well, you don't just keep pushing through. Like you need to look at the entire system and we need to adjust from there. And you do need to take some time away from keeping your lowest absolute scale weight and your absolute peak leanness all the time, especially if you don't feel good in that process and you're not making change that you want to or see. So that's it for this episode. Again, just as a reminder, the performance recount method, which is what I talked about, my one-on-one coaching program is now open through September 19th. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the show notes. Go check it out. You can reach out to me on Instagram, just DM me and we can chat about it and just talk about in more detail if it's something that would work for you. So definitely go and check that out. Let me know if you have any questions and I'll talk to you soon.